Hi, Gregg Perry, the historic preservationist. Just a quick episode here. I want to just talk just a bit about dealing in 2026 with auction houses. There's a few things. If you need to liquidate your lifelong belongings, or you're interested in purchasing items at an auction house. So um, let's talk about selling. But you want to go online and you want to try to do some research of a reputable house, because I'm been dealing with auction houses for 35 years, and I have a lot of people out there that are selling their stuff, their belongings, and not getting paid promptly. So we're in a very crazy time here with our economy, our fuel prices. Some people feel different ways about our government, and it leads to, I think, some unscrupulous minds, business minds at times. So just be aware that what I want you to know is, the terms and conditions of your auction. I want you to read all the paperwork before you sign it when you drop objects off. That you fully understand, number one, what is the commission price? And number two, in what effectively, how quickly do you get paid? So we have Mr. Sweets coming back. This is a cat-friendly environment, obviously, or these guys would be in big trouble. But so they're usually pretty good, but they're great company. But anyway, so read everything to the hilt. But in the last couple of years, things have gone crazy. Things have gone through the roof as far as commission goes. I remember dealing with some houses just a few years ago, a handful of years. Commissions were 18, 19%, and you think, wow, that's pretty high. But today, I'm looking at some New York auction houses up in the low 30s. And that's absolutely crazy. That's a third of the price of that thing you just bought. And I don't think they're seeing the quality of stuff coming down today, or the quantity of things that are coming to the auction house, that they did maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. So they're putting the commission up to compensate for that. So be aware. Be aware that it's going to affect your bottom line of what you're hoping to sell for, and the money you're hoping to make from the sale of the item. And the same token, when you're buying, look at the commission. Is it 25, 20, 30%, and consider where it is, and how much what's it going to take to get that object to you. Are you going to pick it up? Is the object too big? I mean, some of these delivery services are well over the edge. I mean, you could have a tall case clock 20 miles away, and someone could be charging you $500 to deliver it. Today, some of these clocks are not going for $500, and just consider the whole situation. Uh, so, from a perspective of purchasing, and whenever you can, go to that auction and look at that object. A lot of houses, auction houses, are not reputable. The photos they show you are not showing you, or some issues with those objects. So you want to go see if it's something that's important to you. Do you think you're going to restore, or you want to put it as, quote, turnkey into your environment, into your decorating? You want to go see what it is beforehand, because you never get the straight scoop with an auction house. I really don't feel. I've been doing this. I've dealt with probably 35 to 40 of them in my lifetime. And a lot of them are just ignorant. They're just, don't forget, they're just selling used stuff, somebody else's used stuff. And a lot of them come up with a con or a grift, and particularly the big ones in New York City, and you can find out who they are. When you walk into their showrooms in New York City, and there's four big ones, they look at you, if you come in the way I'm dressed, with jeans and just slip on leather shoes, and uh, they're looking, they look at you like you don't belong here. You're going into a objects of art, decorative type auction or something like that. It's amazing. So they create this aura about the whole auction experience in New York City, is that you should be coming in a Rolls Royce or in a limousine or something. So it's very disheartening. But that's who they want to be. They want to be the top dog in the auction world, and they're competing head to toe there. So, and believe it, it does matter to them, because if you have the same object of desire, or what makes this object great, as we've talked about a few objects, if you have that object and you have a maker that had, just say he made 10 in his lifetime. You have one could be found in a firehouse out in Arkansas. One, the same type of object of that nine of that maker could be in New York City, and another could be in a regional auction house in in West Virginia. So you're going to find radical price differences. You could find the auction house at the firehouse in West Virginia. You buy that thing for $300. In West Virginia, you may pay $1,300, and then that same object, if it's in one of the major four, you could be paying $6,000 for the same object. So don't forget, if you have time, you have patience, look and consider where and how far you're willing to go to have that shipped in. And don't forget, if you're buying small items, porcelain items, or decorative wall items that can be shipped UPS or FedEx, don't forget those items. The cost to ship UPS and FedEx today, and the quote packaging of it by one of these local places, can be through the roof. You can be in the $300, $400, $500 range for something that's 2 by 2 by 2 feet with a little bit of weight to it. So don't consider that fully before you do it. And lastly, when you're selling stuff, your stuff, be aware. I've had instances of a client who sold several period Philadelphia chairs. This is about 30 years ago, to one of the big New York auction houses, and a very important Philadelphia tall case clock. The clock was knocked over, and in their contract saying that they had given the client a price of, just say a low price of $10,000 on the clock. And sometimes they put a disclaimer in there: if something happens to this clock, it got knocked over, it got damaged, between when they received it at an auction, they'll only get a small percentage. Sometimes they would pay, say, 20% of the low estimate. That would be $2,000 for a very important Philadelphia long case clock back 30 years ago. And that's a game. Sometimes it could be true, but I think more than not, it's a game. I think some of these auction houses will pull that clock out, and they knew specifically who they'll buy that clock. They're very connected, particularly in the big cities, and they'll sell it to them outright out the back door. So everyone has to be aware. You want proof and photographs of that if there's any damage while it's in their possession. And I personally just had a situation with probably what I would call the fourth auction house in New York, that I sent transport up to pick up a tall case clock, and it was boxed up. The bottom was in a box, the mechanism was in a box, the bonnet was in a box, and it goes out to one of my locations where they'll cut back the finish for me. Rarely do we do this, but the finish was not good, and it went back in 2 days. It goes there, and the individual that we worked together at his location, he starts cutting back the finish, and then it would come back to me for restoration and putting a French polish finish on. And he cut it back, and the clock was black, essentially all black. Cuts it back, and I get the clock, and it sat in my studio for a number of weeks, I think 5 weeks. And I get a call from the auction house, and the auction house tells me that they gave me the wrong bonnet to the wrong base. Now here, you're assuming, coming from a fourth, the degrading of auction house in the city, that they know what the hell they're doing, and they're not having huge mix-ups like this. And then I went out to the studio at 5 weeks after I got this back and put it up, and they said, well, you got the bonnet or the hood of somebody else's clock. I said, like, hell, I'm not bringing it back. You pay to get it back. I'm going to have to pay somebody $500 to drive up to you and to bring this up and get the right one. But I said, it's already been essentially stripped. The patina is off. And she said, he said, the guy likes the patina that's on there. I said, it's too late. It's done. You did it. And so it can cause all kind of problems. And even, it's not your firehouse that did this. It's one of the big guys. So just be well aware. And we'll have another realm coming up. I'm going to be talking about a clock that I did by the Destouches family of Paris, one of the longest lasting family of clockmakers in Paris. And this was about 15 plus years ago. And it was a huge 900-pound clock with two cherubs on it, 9 feet high. And it was made for Napoleon and Josephine in their boudoir in Paris. And anyway, they played the same game at this auction house that it was knocked over or it was damaged. Somebody in transit of moving it around inside their facility to get a photograph, and they paid the owner remnants of peanuts. And we'll get into that into more greater example in the end. So, but anyway, just be aware and get somebody as reputable as you can. If you know someone who's dealt with somebody before and is in a closer proximity than not, because if I'm in the Philadelphia area, I don't want to send my stuff to Boston. If there's a problem, I have to go between states to try to make it, uh, force them to pay me or try to take them to court if that's the essence. So let's cut off. I think I have Mr. Sweets here. He had a big day mousing somewhere, and he's sleeping right now. So uh, Gregg Perry, the historic preservationist, signing off for Mr. Sweets. Thanks everyone for viewing.